Good morning. This is Kenneth with the Advancing Equity Coalition, and I'm so excited to have Julia Freeman on to join me today to talk about teachers of color. Julia is the Director of Community Engagement for Voices for Racial Justice, and she also happens to be the Advancing Equity Coalition's board chair. Julia, how are you doing today?
I'm doing well, Kenneth. How are you?
I'm good, and I'm really
Awesome.
happy that you give so much time to the coalition. But I'm so super happy that you decided to have this conversation with us today, because you are one of who I consider one of the local experts to talk about all the issues surrounding policies and practices around teachers of color and Indigenous teachers in Minneapolis and in the Twin Cities area. And so, yeah, I'm happy to have this conversation as a part of our full series to talk about our key priorities leading up to the Minneapolis School Board election this November. And so, recruitment and retention of teachers of color is one of our key priorities that we think voters should be looking at and paying attention to. And so, thanks for having this conversation with us today about teachers of color, some of the issues that they face in Minneapolis public schools, and yeah, just excited to get into it with you. So, yeah.
Thank you. It is a very important issue for Voices for Racial Justice and our constituents as well. I have been involved in this issue of recruiting and retaining teachers of color for at Minneapolis public schools since 2008. So
Mm-hmm.
it's been a long time coming. And I have listened closely, not only to BIPOC parents and BIPOC students, but also our white students and white parents in the district regarding how important it is to have teachers of color in front of them so that they can have an amazing, well rounded global education.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, why don't you talk about that? What is it? Why are teachers of color so important? We've talked about it plenty throughout this school year and this calendar year, I should say. Um, but as someone who's done this listenings for you know over 15 years, right? Like,
Yes.
what have you learned? What are you hearing?
The most amazing thing that I've heard from parents, and some of it is very telling from white parents that say, I want my child to be able to compete, right, in the global stage, right, be able to be prepared. And so I always tell parents, youth, and students, and educators, and anyone have an opportunity to talk to them about this issue, because you know how passionate I am,
Mm-hmm.
that it's not a them or us issue, right? It's a everybody's issue. And so hearing from directly from parents, directly from students, directly from educators, right? Of how important this issue is so that people learn. They learn, the students say that they have learned, and even adults say being around teachers of color enriches their lives. They feel more prepared. They learn all about different cultures. They learn about different experiences. And so I really believe that this is about student preparation, but also peer preparation, because teachers being in the environment with teachers of color and from different experiences also increase how they educate
Mm.
within the classroom. So it's a win-win for everyone.
Yeah, I just think about what a missed opportunity it really is for our students of color and our white students, just because, in Minneapolis public schools, when we're talking about the need to increase and recruit and retain our teachers of color and indigenous teachers, we have 2,800 teachers in Minneapolis public schools. 2,300 of them are white, right? Let me say that one more time. We have
Yes.
2,800
Yes.
teachers in Minneapolis public schools, licensed teachers in Minneapolis public schools. Approximately 2,300 of them are white, which means 500 of them are non-white. Not just one race, right? I'm not just saying we only have 500 Black teachers, 500 Latino teachers, 500 total non-white teachers in Minneapolis public schools, right? And for a district that is, two-thirds students of color and indigenous students,
Yes.
that is a huge differential disparity in representation. And when you then compound that with what you're just sharing, Julia, in terms of how important they are academically for all students, how important they are in terms of peer support, peer feedback. Um, it just feels like a huge missed opportunity for every single student, every single resident in this city that we do not currently have a more representative base of teachers.
And that's so true, Kenneth. I mean, it is egregious, the upside downness of our teachers of color versus our white teachers in the classroom in Minneapolis classrooms. And I know, because you know this is a push for me, unless there's commitment to change policy and practice
Mm.
in Minneapolis public schools regarding recruitment and retention of teachers of color, that upside downness, that huge disparity, that chasm of difference will remain. And I think it's really important as our parents and resident voters actually engage the school board candidates that are running to really ask, what is the plan? What is your commitment? What some engagements you've done around actually closing that chasm, closing that difference, balancing that upside downness will be important for the school board
So
election coming up.
So for our so we've engaged several Minneapolis residents around being informed voters this election, and so as they're fulfilling their promise around being an informed voter and going to ask candidates about specific things, can you talk to us a little bit about so they have a base of understanding before they go and ask candidates these questions? What have been some of the district's issues in terms of retaining teachers of color when it comes to the culture in the district? Like why are teachers of color and indigenous teachers saying that this culture in the buildings have been so challenging?
Yes, it's important that even when what we've discovered, that even when we get them in the door and have them apply, when we respond to them is late in the game, and most teachers need a chance to work. So they go to other districts. So we lose them that way. Another way we lose amazing talent that when we have them, we don't retain them because we don't give them enough support and enough things around them, and the culture of acceptance and peer learning and all of that. When you are facing all these obstacles as an educator, which we know, and then you are an educator of color, it's just even more compounded. And so then we lose the talent, we don't retain it, right? So that's why I was saying that the policy and practices will be so important. And it will be important for the voters to ask, what is the plan to recruit and retain? You know, have you thought about that as you're active as an active school board candidate? Have you thought about what you will do once you get into office? We understand there's one vote, right? But you can be a voice around this is important to my constituents from where I'm. And if you're at large, it's important to all kinds of constituents. So how are you going to be that voice for recruitment and retention in Minneapolis public schools?
Yeah, I one quote stands out to me when I was talking to a teacher of color about, what they're experiencing in terms of the culture in their buildings. And, a lot of times we talk about it as microaggressions, right? Like they're experiencing
Yeah.
a lot of microaggressions in the
Mm-hmm.
building. And this teacher said, well, there's nothing micro about it. Like we receive, as a teacher of color, specifically as a teacher of color, we receive several aggressions from our colleagues, from
Yes.
administrators, from like everybody around our mere existence in the building, right? And us wanting to see us better support our students of color, our Black students, our brown students, our indigenous students, our non-English speaking students, right? And as a system, we know that we have chronically failed these students, and so they receive a lot of pushback as they're internally, and when I say pushback, I mean aggression, as they're
Mm-hmm.
internally pushing for those things and being advocates as well. Um, and so,
Absolutely. And if we had a commitment with the policies and practices to make sure that our teachers of color, when they come into the district, they have those supports around them so that they could be successful. Because if they're successful, our kids are successful, and we can grow that number from 500 to 1,000 to 2,000 to 3. however we want to grow it, we can grow it if we're committed to removing those racist policies and practices that continue, and practice is so important. Is even
Mhm.
stronger than the policy. This is practices that happen that people are aware of and they close a blind eye to, that this is just practices that are going on in a school, in a classroom, and so it's very important that we pay attention to that.
So another issue that's recently come up around teachers of, especially retention of teachers of color, is there's been a recent right-wing conservative attack nationally against the protections that were recently put in place to prevent teachers of color and indigenous teachers from being cut due to layoffs from their buildings. And so, we've talked a little bit about this in a previous video in terms of like our frustration and disappointment about this. What do you think voters should be thinking about as they're engaging candidates around this issue? Like, yeah, what do you think should be done?
Well, I think, our voters are intelligent and they realize that this practice of that they're talking about keeping has failed our children. And I'm talking about BIPOC students and white students for years. So what they're saying is, let's keep the status quo. Let's not do something different. Let's not take a chance to better the education for our students. Let's keep it the way it is, right? And that's going to hurt our students. We have to be bold and brave enough to say, we want the best education. I mean, we're behind all kinds of nations around the world,
And
right, that
states in
have
the
less
country.
resources and that, and it's embarrassing,
Mhm.
so unless we do something radical, right, we cannot continue to do the same thing over and over and expect a different result. So someone is saying, oh, put the brakes on something that's a different and initiative that is bold and
Anti-racist.
anti-racist, right?
Yeah.
Put the brakes on that and let's just keep the racist policies that we have in place that will not grow, will not move the needle one bit for teachers of color in Minneapolis public schools. I say shame.
Yeah.
I
And so
say shame.
I think it's important when thinking about teachers of color, and as again voters continue to do research about which candidates they want to support, ask your candidate, like, if for whatever reason these protections for teachers of color fall, what is your candidate willing to do to ensure that we do not lose any teachers of color due to budget cuts anymore? Right? Because this is a big issue, especially with
Yes,
the financial situation that the district is in. We are going to need
absolutely.
to cut teachers soon, and we can't continue to destabilize teachers of color and continue to cost our students from all across the district, of all backgrounds, of all races, their educational excellence, because we decided to, like you said, keep the status quo, keep the things the same, and continue to have really racist outcomes in terms of who gets let go and who gets to stay. Um,
and and parents are watching and parents are leaving
yep,
because of that. So it's important that we do something different. Minneapolis is important that we do something different and
yep,
something better for our BIPOC and our white students in Minneapolis public schools.
100%. So I do want to give you an opportunity to share, because I know you are
Yes.
co-hosting an opportunity to learn
Yeah.
directly from the candidates. You want to share a
Yes.
little bit about it?
Yes. So we are super excited. Voices for Racial Justice and E4E, that's Education for Excellence, are co-hosting an amazing candidates forum, and everyone is invited. Please, please come, get informed, listen from directly from candidates on this issue of teachers of color and student well-being. They're two of the things that we'll be covering. And so it is going to be Monday, September 19th from 6 p.m. to 7 p.m. If your show comes on at that time, please use your DVR and record it, because this will be a better show than that, right? So you don't want to miss it. We really, really, really would love to see you. And there's a link information in the chat for you to register.
Yeah, we'll leave the link to register in the comments. Is it in person? Is it virtual? Can you
Oh yeah,
tell us
okay.
more
So it
details?
is virtual.
Okay.
So it's a virtual opportunity to learn because we want to get as many people there. We're hoping hundreds and hundreds. And here's the key thing. What you learn there, our ask is that you take it back into your community, over the dinner table, in the workplace, wherever, and share what you've learned. We just don't want it to stay. We want what's learned to leave and go out. So
Awesome. Well, great. So sounds like Monday, September 19th from 6 p.m. to 7 p.m. virtually on Zoom. I
yes,
take it
on
on
Zoom.
Zoom.
Zoom's the platform. Yes.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for the time, Julia, and thank you for giving the community another opportunity to learn directly from the candidates about these important issues and where they stand. And I'm just so appreciative of your partnership and that I get to continue to work with you and that you give us all an opportunity to learn from you. So thank you so much for that.
This is great. Thanks, Kenneth.
Yeah. Take care. Have a great day.
You too.